Absolutely yes. Of course it can. However, there are more things I want to talk about. Before anything, check out this 5 seconds clip of Silent Hill's performance on the R36S. First things first, I can't express enough how much I love the R36S's speakers, especially over the MIYOO Mini Plus, unfortunately, because I love that little device.
Cheryl? Is that Cheryl? Where are you going? Hey, wait! Stop!
You can crank up the volume up to the maximum level and you'll get way less distortion than you might think you'd get. I really dig that. One of the first things I noticed when starting to play was how comfortable it is to be able to play using a joystick than only having the D-pad as an option. Even though Harris controls are tank based, which can be a pain in the butt if you're too used to modern adventure or even horror games. Now, I do appreciate having a joystick to play with in such a cheap device. This way I have two options to choose when controlling my character, right? Not really. The D-pad on the R36S might be alright for a 2D platformer, but I don't consider them to be the best experience to play a 3D game like this. They feel way more cheap than the MIYOO Mini Plus's one, and require more strength. Also, they feel a bit sharp on the edges, which gives it an even more cheap feeling. But they're here. They're not bad. I don't think they're bad. Speaking of bad, I remember playing this game on my MIYOO Mini Plus and having to deal with a weird coloring effect, which turned out to be the result you see when you turn off a resource called dithering. That doesn't happen here in the R36S. So apparently Silent Hill and many other games used dithering as a way to perform gradient shading and blending. Having dithering turned off give you more performance, but at the cost of graphic fidelity. So here, I didn't have to change a single setting. It all came built in, as it should. That is why you see this weird pixely look. So as far as I know, it's supposed to look like this. So this is good. Look, this is how Konami decided to play with color grading, and it is pretty aggressive in this game. Also, still talking about weird looking and rendering, sure that the fog in Silent Hill is iconic and everything, it's a central part of the game's atmosphere, but did you know that it was actually made to mask not rendering but loading times? You see, there are lots of games on the PS1 that have a much wider field of view, so why does a AAA game made by Mr. Konami can't do that? Turns out it can. The only thing is that in order for you to roam around the city, you'd have to face several loading screens from block to block or so. What was far from the experience the developers wanted. The best way they found was to reduce your distance rendering in such a way that the game is constantly loading new scenarios, without having to give you a loading screen or anything like that. So, my friends, this is Silent Hill. Silent Hill was made by a Konami department called Team Silent, composed of director Keiichi Toyama, character designer Takayoshi Sato, writer Hiroyuki Oko, composer Akira Yamaoka, and master monster creator Masahiro Ito. Each and every one of them had worked in dozens of other projects that didn't really rock it, so they decided to give it one last chance before leaving the team and even Konami. And we all know how that ended, a game that defined generations, etc. Differently from its predecessors, Silent Hill didn't use pre-rendered backgrounds. Instead, it rendered everything real time, and that, along with the sound design and the combination of other elements that compose the game, Toyama said he was surprised how the game turned out to be so creepy. He didn't expect that huge of a combo coming up. After the release of the first Silent Hill, Toyama did something no one expected him to do. He left his job at Konami to join Sony Computer Entertainment. Even being the director of one of the hugest games of the generation, he stated that he had assumed the position of director too early in his career and had the impression that he was indeed not helping nor guiding the creators as much as he thought he should. So he ended up working in other game series like Siren and Gravity Rush, which is not a horror game, but I definitely recommend. Remember Sato, the guy I said was the main character designer? He was one of the youngest in the team, and in Japanese culture and tradition that counts a lot. Because of that, he was given way less significant tasks than the ones he wanted, like creating the game's subtitles, organizing files, taking care of the systems, etc. Meanwhile, he was constantly catching himself teaching the older artists how to do work in 3D, since it was an insanely new technology around and he, being young, was all into that. Of course, he became frustrated after a while, imagining everything he could be actually contributing to the game, and he made his own 3D presentation like a tech demo. He offered the team a bargain to be able to actually work in real 3D work in exchange for continuing to teach the older dudes how to do their jobs. Only because of this bold move, we are now able to enjoy Silent Hill as it is. Even granting him his wish, Konami still had some concerns about letting such a young guy work with such new technology on such expensive computers, so they were planning to give him a private supervisor. Of course, Sato didn't like the idea of being supervised and promised he could complete all of the CGI cutscenes present in the game by himself. So, living the stereotype, he began working 24/7, living in the office, sleeping under his desk. And that's not only for the addiction of working. He realized that he was way more productive after everyone else has left the office, as it meant he could have the opportunity to use all of the 150 computers the company had to render his work, instead of limiting himself to only his. And because they were in such a limited generation of 3D modeling, Sato had big struggles to model Caucasian characters, since their database included way more Japanese ones, so he had to assume most of the characters' facial and cranial features. Speaking of modeling, I always thought the designs for the monsters in Silent Hill didn't follow any pattern at all. Like, we have dogs, puppets, and flying dinosaurs. Like, where does all of that come from? You may not know that all the design for monsters was nothing but an externalization of Alessa Gillespie's, who's like a very important character, own obsessions and compulsions. For example, the Air Screamer is based on Alessa's imagination of a pterosaur from one of the books she likes. The puppet nurse and puppet doctor showed later in the game represent Alessa's disgust for her caretakers in Al Camila Hospital. We can find that out exploring the depths of Midwich Middle School, in which we can find an article called The Manifestation of Delusions, which says that the monsters are fueled by an individual's, specifically a child's, anxiety and fear. Since each game in the series follow a different person, this explains the appearance of completely different monsters throughout the series. This is Silent Hill running on the R36S. I haven't noticed any frame drops, and if you wish to see more games like this being tested here, leave a comment down below. My name is Victor, and I'm out.